everybody out here to my house now.
Okay, all right.
My wife and my kids are dead. Get everybody out here to my house.
Go to Dave.
Hey YouTube, welcome back. This is another episode of Crime Couples today. We are going to be looking at the David Camm. So in 2000, David Camm came home from playing a game of basketball and came home to find his entire family had been murdered in their garage. This is going to be something that lasted 3 trials over 13 years to find out the truth. Hey everyone, we're traveling, we're on the road, but we decided that we were still interested in this case, that we wanted to go ahead and bring you a video on it to move forward.
We listened to this case on our drive. We're actually in Sarasota, Florida for a wedding, and I was interested in this case a few months back when I heard it on a podcast that I listened to on the daily. On September 28th, 2000, David Camm came home from playing basketball with his friends. He pulled up to the garage and saw his wife, Kim, lying on the floor. He got out of his vehicle and attempted to perform CPR on her, but found out she was unresponsive, and he saw the look in her eyes and knew she was gone. He, at that point, wondered where his children were. He has 2 young children, Bradley, who is 7, and Jill, who is 5. He searched the SUV and found Bradley shot in the stomach, and his daughter Jill shot execution style in the head.
So at this point, after David got home and discovered his entire family was dead, he, being a former state Indiana trooper, called dispatch and demanded to speak to supervisor directly. Sat on hold for a quick minute, and you're actually going to see this. We are going to be playing the 911 call. It is very frantic, it is very scattered, it's all over the place. This man is in serious distraught stress. And again, this is another one kind of hard to listen to when you think about what had just happened here at his house.
United States Police Radio, Patrice, can I help you?
Patrice, it's David Camm. Let me talk to Post Command right now.
Okay, he's on another line.
Right now, let me talk to Post Command.
Hold on.
You're my only truth. I need you
Dave?
Get everybody out here to my house now.
Okay, all right.
My wife and my kids are dead. Get everybody out here to my house.
Go to Dave Camm's house now. Signal 10. Okay, David, we got people on the way, okay?
Get everybody out here.
Come here. Everything's going to be okay, all right? We're going to get people...
Everything's not okay. Get everybody out here
Okay,
now.
they're coming. Go to Dave Camm's house now. Okay. Do you know what happened, David?
No, they're dead. I just got home from playing basketball.
4548 Phillipsburg.
Oh my God, what am I going to do? Andrew, get everybody out.
David, they're on their way right now, okay? I got everybody coming. Listen, I'm going to let you talk to Patrice while I get people coming.
Across the street, I got to get some help.
Okay, David, do you need an ambulance?
Across to my parents' house.
Do you need an ambulance?
Get everybody out.
I'm going. Do you need an ambulance?
I gotta go.
Dave, he hung up.
After listening to that, you can definitely tell that there's a lot of pain in this man's voice. So after he did get off the phone with dispatch and talk to the supervisor, emergency services came out to his residence. They started trying to process the scene, going through it. We did see that the scene, for what they reported, was somewhat cleaned up. They really didn't find much forensic evidence right away. So at the time of the scene process, they didn't get much. Did turn out David was convicted and charged with all 3 murders only 3 days after that.
All the while, David, while he was in prison, maintained his innocence. But while we were reading, it seemed, and listening to 48 Hours, different podcasts, it seemed like the prosecution was almost planting evidence or discussing evidence that they wanted to be shown and hiding other evidence. And it seemed like they were just out for him, that they didn't investigate anybody else. He was guilty, end of story. So David Camm, on his first trial, was found guilty by a jury of his peers and sentenced to 105 years. The evidence at the scene appeared to be kind of bizarre. Her shoes, Kim's shoes, were found on top of the vehicle. Reports say she's never done anything like this.
He said neatly just set on top of the van.
Set on top of the van, which is kind of weird. And then also they had taken off David Camm's clothing to kind of go over it. And they did find 8 microscopic blood spatter that was from the children and Kim. So they say that David was the one shooting the weapon and that he was within 4 feet and that would produce the blood spatter on his shirt.
They had brought in a forensic analysis from this doctor, and he had said that the only way that this could be is if you were within 4 feet and that was a blood splatter, which was later, it was kind of discredited by the defense on this side when they brought in their own specialist, and he said, I've never seen any incident where if a shooter was in 4 feet, they only have 8 microscopic droplets from blood.
But one thing we did find out through the documentaries is that the prosecution's blood spatter analysis expert was not an expert at all.
He was a fake.
He was a fake. There were no credentials.
He had forged all of them.
He forged everything. So I couldn't find out whether or not the analysis was thrown out or if they still continue to use it. In my opinion, if somebody who's supposedly an expert is not an expert, I don't know how you can use that evidence to convict a man.
Especially on a side that convicted him to a prison sentence like that.
Correct.
So while David remained in prison, his attorneys did start working on the appeal process. Now, on the first trial, the main focus of the prosecution was to expose his affairs and try to take him apart and attack him as a person.
So David did admit to having these affairs with women. He said they were years and years ago that him and his wife had problems in the mid-90s. And this all occurred in 2000. So he said their wedding or their marriage was the best it had been in a long time. So he admits wholeheartedly to these affairs and just said he had made some bad choices at that time in his life, but these were not linked to the murder of his family, and none of the women were found to be linked to the case.
Now, while his attorneys were working on the appeal process, they started going back through some of the investigation work that was done. They noticed that there were 2 key pieces of evidence that were found but not presented during the first trial. The first big thing is there was an unidentified handprint on the SUV.
Like, they found it, but it was never brought up in the first trial. They said there was no DNA found in CODIS, which is a load.
And the second item was a sweater that was rolled up and bunched next to his son inside of the vehicle. And on that sweater on the inside was name stitched. It was a name.
It wasn't a name stitch. It was written in marker. And it was backbone.
Backbone.
So it looks like a prison-issued sweatshirt that they would write their names in, so they knew it was their sweatshirt, basically. I've seen it in, like, socks. They write their name in the socks so that they know it's theirs when they do mass laundry.
And the weird thing about this is on that sweater, they found a different DNA from a male and a female on it.
So with these 2 key pieces of evidence, the handprint and the sweatshirt, the prosecution said that they sent all that stuff to the Indiana State Police and that they asked them to run the prints through CODIS and check for DNA. So the prosecution claims that the state troopers reported back to them that there was no known DNA. So the person's profile was not entered in CODIS. This was found later to be incorrect. I guess there was a chain of command problem where it didn't actually get submitted and run. So, I mean, this could have been proved back at the first trial. So we have David, who's sitting in prison for supposedly a crime that he didn't commit.
And as soon as they did, the defense did run the information, DNA, and prints through CODIS, almost instantly they said there was a match.
And that was Charles Boney. He's a very infamous criminal. Back in college, when he was in college, he was assaulting women, and he was known as the Shoe Bandit.
Because obviously, or oddly enough, he had a foot fetish, specifically shoes, women's shoes.
Right. So in all the cases that he was convicted for, the women say that he was like trying to steal their shoes, that he was they were held at gunpoint. There's even a woman who lived with 2 other girls, and he entered their home, and I don't know what he was doing in there, but he held them all at gunpoint. And they all were on 48 hours and said that they feared for their lives because, I mean, there's a crazy man that you don't know in your house with a gun. What is he there for? My shoes.
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. So while David is in prison, they did file an appeal, and the first conviction was thrown out. They stated that the prosecution should have never been focused on the infidelity of David Camm, that it had nothing to do with the murders, and discredited him as a person, had nothing to do with him murdering his family. So the original conviction was thrown out. So while Charles Boney was questioned and investigated, at this time, he states that he has no idea who David Camm is. Like, absolutely knows who he is as a person, has never been around him, nothing.
So at this point, we're going to progress, and we're at the second trial, which again, David is convicted, and actually on this one, he is sentenced to serve life with no possibility of parole. Now, later on, this is also appealed, and on this appeal, he's actually released and able to go out on bond. However, about an hour or so the same day that he is released, he was then charged again by the prosecution as being a conspirator along with Bonet in the killing of his family.
So we have Charles Boney, who is a career criminal, and I really think his integrity, it's not there, because he's been lying throughout this whole trial. First, he says he doesn't know David Camm at all. And then now, when they're charged the second time, he said that he met David Camm at a basketball game, and David Camm knew he was a felon and came to him and questioned him, propositioned him basically. I want to kill my family, I need weapon to do it, and can you help me?
So after flipping around stories a couple different times, this is the story that Bonet stuck with through the rest of the trials and even through today still. He had said that he went to deliver this handgun to David at his home. And what he said is the handgun, he wrapped it in a sweater. That was his reasoning for the sweater being there to give it to him. He said as soon as he gave it to him, it started going different and changed what he thought it was going to be. He said his family pulled up in the black SUV, wife got out, he was going to leave.
And he heard a pop.
Yep, and then he heard followed by 2 more pops, which he said was the death shots of David's family. And then he said he turned around and looked, and David was going to then shoot him, but the gun jammed.
Yeah.
And so apparently he ran towards David at the garage, which makes 0 sense to me. Anyone that knows anything about guns, if you do have a gun that's jammed, and especially a state trooper would know this, you just clear the gun, exit the bat round, and you can fire
again. Yeah, why would you attack?
There's zero mindset behind that. I have no idea.
But he's not a very smart guy.
And this is all fabricated lie.
Yeah, exactly. So we have yet another trial, the third one, and this is like 12 to 13 years. David's been in prison this whole time for something that he didn't commit, and that truth was actually shown in the third trial. He had a new defense lawyer, and the prosecution had changed hands, I think, twice as well. Mm-hmm. He was found not guilty, and they said that the blood spatter on the shirt, the 8 microscopic, can only be there if you're the one holding the gun, was found to be kind of brush off, because he said when he originally got home, he tried to administer CPR to his wife. He looked in the SUV and he actually pulled out his son and laid him on the floor. So, I mean, there's blood everywhere. if you're attempting to rescue your family or anyone for that matter, you're going to get blood on you. So this was the reasoning behind the blood being on the sweater, and this was proven by blood spatter analysis and approved by, obviously, the jury agreed with them. So he was in prison for 13 years. And if I was in prison for 13 years for something that I didn't do, I would expect some repayment for that. So he did file a lawsuit with Floyd County, with the Indiana State Highway Patrol, the two prosecuting attorneys.
Yeah.
So they reached a settlement, $450,000. And they say he also received a payout for his wife's life insurance and her 401k. So, that's a lot of money to just you and I, but to lose your family, your 2 kids, and your wife for a little over $1 million, I think I'd take my family over the money any day.
And he said that, if you listen to interviews with him, he says, the money is pretty much whatever, but I want my family back.
Right.
I want my babies.
Through all of the documentaries and stuff we read, he's so genuine. You can see tears in his eyes if you watch the 48 Hours documentary. And then we also watched his local county has a television station, and they did a 4-part episode on just, he was in jail at this time, and they were just asking him questions, and it's really, really heartfelt, and it really hit me because this poor man lost his family, number one, and now he's serving
all that scrutiny.
Yeah, and you know what, people out there, we were talking about, there's always going to be those people that think he did it, even though he was proved not guilty. And that's the hardest part is, you live in a small town, you know everybody. So, it's just, I feel so terrible for this man. And
not one time through this entire process did his story waver. That just kind of goes to testament that, these things happen to it. And I actually think we heard now he's working with the department or
at the Innocence
program.
Project to help free innocent people who were convicted. So this man's doing good with all the bad that has happened to him. So if you guys have any additional information for us or anything you'd like to comment, feedback for us, we really enjoy doing this for you guys, especially even on the road. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. And
thank you.
Subscribe and like.